Good evening, everyone. Our first topic tonight sheds light on a disturbing reality from the past. The historical misinterpretation, misdiagnosis, and punishment of women's emotions, fears, and mental well-being are explored throughout different eras, from ancient medicine to the Victorian era. Women's conditions like hysteria were treated with extreme and often harmful methods, which were previously considered acceptable. Before settling in, I invite you to show your support by liking the video and subscribing, only if you genuinely enjoy the content. In the comments, share where you are watching from and the local time, as it is always intriguing to connect with viewers worldwide. Dim the lights, maybe add a fan for gentle background noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. Our exploration begins in ancient Greece, a realm of thinkers, legends, and peculiar medical beliefs. Imagine being a woman in 400 BC and experiencing unsettling symptoms, like a tight chest, racing heart, and sudden waves of panic. Seeking help from a healer, you might be astonished when he diagnoses you with a wandering womb. This theory, proposed by the renowned Hippocrates, suggested that women's wombs could move around independently if they experienced excessive emotions, anxiety, or remained celibate. Consequently, symptoms such as dizziness, breathlessness, and trembling were explained as the wandering uterus causing chaos in the body. The prescribed treatments for this condition. Imagine a scenario where doctors did not offer comforting blankets or herbal teas. Instead, they would use fragrant herbs near the pelvis and pungent ones near the nose in an attempt to coax the womb back into place. Picture lying still while someone waves burning garlic under your nose, as if conducting a ritual for your uterus. This unusual method was the prevailing explanation for women's distress in a society where they lacked voting rights, property ownership, and even the freedom to wear trousers. Anxiety was not viewed as a psychological or emotional state, but rather attributed to erratic reproductive activities. Despite the lack of advanced medical technology or modern psychological theories, the Greeks held the uterus accountable for everything. It is akin to a mechanic blaming a wandering cup holder for a car breakdown. Ancient women were experiencing deep emotions like sorrow, fear, stress, and uncertainty. Yet instead of being asked about their feelings, they were handed incense and informed about their misplaced uterus. Consequently, a culture of silence emerged, where symptoms were misunderstood and stories remained untold. Transitioning to ancient Rome, a society marked by progress in infrastructure but lacking in compassion, Roman women grappling with anxiety had no access to therapists, helplines, or relaxation aids like bath bombs. Instead, they were advised to marry or have children promptly, as per the male-dominated medical views attributing emotional distress to an idle uterus. Termed as fur uterinus, this condition was a far cry from today's understanding of anxiety. In Roman culture, a battle formation was not meant literally, but used to describe female emotional instability. Women who displayed excessive crying, speaking out of turn, or appearing agitated were considered to be failing at their traditional roles. It was believed that the solution to this was repeated childbirth. Soranus, a Roman physician and author of a gynecological textbook, suggested that women should avoid strong emotions altogether to resolve this issue. Husbands were advised to be gentle, likely interpreted as not raising their voices during meals. Wealthy Roman women showing signs of anxiety might be prescribed wine and music. However, the underlying belief was still that their womb was the root cause of the problem, likened to a malfunctioning bakery machine. Poorer women had more straightforward remedies such as herbal treatments, spiritual rituals, or being disregarded completely. Challenging a husband's authority, not smiling at dinner, or grieving too long after a miscarriage could lead to being labeled as unstable or even accused of being possessed. Women received little empathy as their pain was medicalized, moralized, and downplayed. Moving on to the Middle Ages, a period marked by knights, plagues, and superstitions. Anxiety in women was often believed to be a sign of demonic possession. Medical knowledge regressed during this era, with little advancement occurring. During the era when Greek concepts of womb transmigration still lingered, they were now infused with a significant amount of dread, flames, and intense fear. Women displaying symptoms resembling what we now identify as anxiety, like trembling, weeping, panic attacks, and intrusive thoughts, were often viewed as spiritually compromised individuals. If a woman's hands shook or she cried during the night, it was not considered a result of trauma, but rather attributed to demonic presence. Religious institutions, particularly the church, had a significant influence on the methods of healing during that time, which frequently involved exorcisms, public shaming, or, in severe cases, being burned at the stake. Women who admitted to hearing voices or displayed unusual behavior were vulnerable to accusations of practicing witchcraft, using herbal remedies, having knowledge of celestial bodies, or crying excessively, signs that were perceived as associated with satanic influence during that era. Anxiety was not merely misunderstood, it was regarded with deep fear, particularly when experienced by the wrong individual, leading to confinement in a convent, public dunking, or legal prosecution based on flimsy evidence, like appearing odd during religious rituals. Despite efforts by some nuns in monasteries and infirmaries to care for women experiencing mental distress, the lack of genuine understanding of psychological conditions meant that treatment primarily consisted of prolonged prayers, isolation, and abstaining from food. The prevalent diagnostic methods involved pressing a cross against a person's forehead during an anxiety-induced fainting or trembling episode to gauge the reaction, which could have severe consequences, such as losing possessions and facing public ridicule. It is a poignant reflection on the past to recognize that these afflicted women were not malevolent witches, sinners, or vessels for evil spirits. They were individuals grappling with profound anguish, striving to find solace amid sorrow and attempting to navigate feelings of dread. Yet, within a society deeply entrenched in fear, a woman who displayed signs of tremor or distress often faced grave repercussions. During the Renaissance, there was a lack of understanding regarding threats, as they were typically destroyed rather than comprehended. This historical period is often romanticized as a time of renewal, showcasing advancements in art, science, and literature. However, one aspect that remained neglected was the concern for women's mental well-being, which seemed to be stuck in a regressive mindset. While renowned figures like Michelangelo and Da Vinci excelled in their crafts, medical professionals still struggled to grasp the emotions experienced by women. The prevalent belief continued to attribute women's feelings to the uterus, despite the resurgence of ancient texts that were now being interpreted with a more sophisticated approach. This led to persistent stereotypes, claiming women were overly feminine and prone to anxiety. Treatment for women's emotional distress was archaic, involving practices like leeching, cupping, bleeding, or applying heated substances to restore a supposed bodily equilibrium. Women were often confined, restricted from intellectual pursuits, and subjected to therapies aimed at pacifying their emotions. The societal emphasis on beauty and order clashed with the reality of women who exhibited signs of emotional turmoil. Their suffering was viewed as disruptive and inconvenient, resulting in them being silenced and marginalized. In the chambers where brilliant creations came to life, women grappling with anxiety moved quietly, wondering if the issue lay within themselves rather than external circumstances. During the Enlightenment era, women's fears were viewed as personal shortcomings to be concealed, not as genuine distress warranting attention. The 17th and 18th centuries marked a period of significant advancements in science and philosophy, with figures like Isaac Newton elucidating complex concepts such as gravity. However, for women experiencing anxiety, the era's emphasis on reason provided little solace, as their struggles were often dismissed as mere female afflictions. Physicians of the time, now adorned in powdered wigs, began discussing the nervous system and referred to such women as nervous ladies, albeit in a seemingly refined manner. Despite these advancements, the prevailing belief persisted that women were inherently fragile and predisposed to nervous disorders due to their excessive nerves and vivid imagination. Consequently, women exhibiting symptoms like frequent crying or panic attacks were typically prescribed rest, gentle exercises, or laudanum, a mixture of alcohol and opium. While laudanum may have alleviated their distress, it did so by numbing their senses rather than addressing the underlying issues. Wealthier women had the option of seeking solace in retreats, specially designed for nervous individuals, in a setting where servants attend to your needs while subtly discouraging any exploration of distressing topics like personal emotions. The women without financial means had no access to sedation and had to endure their struggles. Speaking out in anger, frustration, or displaying ambition could lead to being labeled not just anxious, but unstable, or even mad, potentially resulting in confinement by your spouse without a trial or explanation, merely a signature of authorization and silence. This was the era of enlightenment. Men were encouraged to engage in rational discourse. Women were soothed with sedatives. Philosophers debated publicly, while housewives suffered in private despair. And libraries were constructed on logical principles, all while fear kept doors locked. While the world reveled in the excitement of new discoveries, women facing anxiety silently bore their burdens, often medicated, misunderstood, and told that their suffering was merely a fleeting nervous episode that required no concern. Just breathe deeply and avoid deep contemplation. Transitioning into the 19th century marked the Victorian era, where outward appearances exuded elegance, with tightly cinched corsets, impeccable manners, and a strict prohibition on showing emotions, especially for women, which was considered improper. Anxiety remained prevalent, but was now masked under a new guise. Enter the era of the rest cure, introduced by Dr. Silas Weir Mitchell, a man known for his distinguished mustache but dubious level of empathy. Prescribed for women afflicted with what was broadly diagnosed as nervous conditions, feelings of anxiety, fatigue, or depression. The rest cure dictated weeks or even months of bed rest, devoid of reading, writing, visitors, or emotional discussions. Enclosed in a plush chamber with heavy drapes, served boiled milk, the patients could feel the unsettling sensation of their sanity slipping away due to the treatment. Women were expected to yield to stillness, embracing passivity, where any movement was viewed as an act of defiance, and thoughts were deemed perilous. Should a woman resist this oppressive treatment, she risked being accused of defying societal norms. Healing, often resulting in more confinement, was not an uncommon approach. Renowned author Charlotte Perkins Gilman underwent the rest cure herself, and later penned The Yellow Wallpaper, a disturbing tale of a woman driven to madness by enforced silence. Surprisingly, it wasn't the wallpaper that led to her breakdown. Rather, it was the suffocating neglect disguised in gentle, padded surroundings. Furthermore, there were the asylums where women with unresponsive anxiety could end up after attempts at treatments like milk and obligatory naps failed. Once inside, they were subjected to methods such as ice baths, electrotherapy, and constant monitoring, with some even receiving morphine or being restrained for extended periods. Their offenses ranged from crying excessively to speaking too quickly or refusing to smile. Yet no one delved into the reasons behind their behaviors, be it trauma, loss, or societal pressure. In the Victorian era, women were expected to embody serenity and grace, and those who didn't conform were elegantly tucked away, far from society's prying eyes. Enter the early 1900s, a time of loosening corsets, industrial progress, and the emergence of Sigmund Freud, who remarkably attributed nearly everything to one's upbringing or paternal influence. Freud, the pioneer of psychoanalysis, proposed a groundbreaking notion that women's troubles might stem from their minds, their unconscious, repressed desires, or unresolved conflicts. This breakthrough should have signaled progress, shifting from harsh treatments to compassionate listening sessions, which indeed marked a significant step forward. Prior to celebrating with champagne, let's consider the perceptions of women's anxiety prevalent at the time. Freud and his followers often linked women's anxiety to repressed sexual desires or internalized guilt, typically stemming from their relationships with their parents. If a woman was experiencing anxiety, it was likely due to concealing something scandalous, yet to be realized. Fear of leaving the house was viewed as symbolic. Recurring nightmares possibly represented issues with the mother, and panic attacks were seen as Freudian, perhaps with a phallic undertone. Although this new treatment method was less physically aggressive, it subtly placed blame on the individual, implying that the problem existed within them rather than being a result of their circumstances or past experiences. The idea was to address and resolve these internal conflicts, with the notion that if one didn't improve, it was due to a lack of effort or resistance to the revelations. Psychoanalysis rapidly gained popularity among the intellectual elite, with doctors taking notes in dimly lit rooms as women shared their dreams and fears, all while striving for recognition and validation. While it marked progress, it was delicate, as women's anxiety continued to be interpreted through a male perspective, often simplified to issues of desire, yearning, or unresolved paternal relationships. The lingering question persisted. Could a woman's anxiety simply be acknowledged without being labeled as defective? Or would every moment of fear and distress be attributed to a theory rather than a genuine experience? Fast forward to the 1950s. The war has ended, lawns are neatly manicured, and the pressure to have dinner ready by 6 is looming as a woman in the suburbs, poised with polished nails, a radiant smile, and pearls adorning your neck. Discussing your anxiety remains a taboo subject, despite the positive portrayal in glossy magazines and daytime radio. You might still find yourself wanting to scream. This is where Mother's Little Helper comes in, a term used for a small pill that offers a big promise of calmness. Valium and its predecessor, Milltown, were specifically marketed to women, particularly housewives, who were feeling overwhelmed, unappreciated, or quietly falling apart amidst their domestic responsibilities. If you were feeling blue, anxious, or emotionally detached, all you had to do was take a pill and put on a happy face for the world. These sedatives were readily prescribed by doctors without delving into the underlying issues of trauma or loneliness that women might be experiencing. The society of the time expected women to be content, and if they weren't, it was seen as a personal flaw. Pharmaceutical companies eagerly fed into this narrative, using ads that depicted women seeking solace in tranquilizers to cope with their burdens. By the 1960s, millions of women were medicated not because of mental illness, but because of exhaustion, unexplained sadness, and societal pressures they couldn't articulate. While these medications provided temporary relief, they often led to long-term dependency. Yet, the discussion around addiction was taboo, especially for women. Despite their inner turmoil, women continued to put on a facade of happiness and compliance, while deep inside, the question lingered: what if their anxiety was not a disorder, but rather a warning sign? In the 1970s, a significant shift occurred, marked by a quiet outcry from a soul silenced for too long. While the casserole remained warm and the house orderly, the woman dwelling within began to question her circumstances. Why was she the only one subdued? Why was her pain medicated but not discussed openly? Who decreed that her anxiety warranted an apology? It was during this period that the feminist movement gained momentum, not fueled by anger, but by newfound clarity. Women engaged in consciousness-raising sessions in various settings, sharing their experiences and realizing they were not alone. They came to understand that anxiety was not a personal flaw, but often a consequence of being overburdened, ignored, and expected to carry out emotional labor as if it were a given. Texts like Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique unveiled the hidden struggles of women confined by societal expectations, illuminating a nameless problem. These women felt a sense of emptiness and restlessness, despite having everything society claimed they should desire. Finally, someone voiced the underlying truth. The issue was not within them, but embedded in the walls, expectations, and silence surrounding them. As the silence shattered, women reclaimed their narratives, rejecting tranquilizers as mere placations. They began to challenge the institutions that had disregarded their emotions for centuries. A fresh breed of counselors emerged in therapy spaces, willing to listen without presuming that every panic attack signaled a longing for marriage or motherhood. Women ventured into fields such as psychology, medicine, and psychiatry, not just as patients, but as professionals. While challenges persisted, including frequent misdiagnoses, enduring biases, and the active involvement of pharmaceutical giants, a crucial shift had taken place. Women had found their voices, and this time they refused to be silenced, making connections between personal pain and societal expectations. linking internal battles with external influences, they began to transform their story from self-blame to understanding the circumstances that led to their struggles. Through shared experiences and open discussions, a revolutionary realization emerged among women. Their anxiety was not a sign of insanity, but a valid response to trying to make their voices heard in a society that ignored them. In the 1980s and 90s, women's anxiety was finally given legitimate diagnostic terms like generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and PTSD, a significant step away from outdated notions like hysteria or mere fatigue. While progress was evident in psychiatry's precision and the expansion of therapeutic options covered by insurance, the journey of a woman dealing with anxiety still carried familiar burdens of doubt, dismissal, and social stigma. Seeking help for panic attacks in the 1990s might result in receiving medication and lifestyle advice rather than a deep understanding of the underlying issues. Though therapy became more accessible, finding a therapist who treated anxiety as a legitimate medical concern rather than an emotional weakness remained a hurdle. The experience for women navigating anxiety was often fraught with judgment and misinterpretation, where showing emotions labeled them as fragile and stoicism could be seen as denial. Despite the advancements in recognizing and treating women's anxiety, many still faced challenges in finding validation and understanding in the mental health system. The individual finally found a name for their feelings, akin to being given a mirror after years of darkness. It wasn't seen as weakness or personal failure, but as a real issue that had been present all along. Medications like SSRIs, such as Prozac and Zoloft, became popular, marketed as modern solutions to contemporary challenges, and, for many, they proved beneficial. However, these medications often lacked a thorough explanation, bypassing the exploration of trauma, personal history, or generational patterns. The progress made was clinical rather than compassionate, structured instead of sensitive. Despite the introduction of new labels and medications, the familiar loneliness persisted. Even with names, pills, and informational brochures, the lingering question remained unanswered in the silence. Would anyone ever inquire about their fears? The 2000s welcomed a new era where flip phones were fashionable, low-rise jeans were perplexing, and, for the first time in centuries, people began to ask not just what is wrong with you, but what has happened to you. This subtle revolution was not marked by banners or protests, but by TED Talks, memoirs, and a gradual shift in clinical dialogues. Researchers, therapists, and trauma survivors started connecting long overlooked dots. Anxiety was no longer viewed merely as a chemical imbalance or oddity, but as a common reaction to a difficult life. The term trauma-informed care gained prominence, redirecting the focus from treating anxiety as an individual flaw to asking broader questions about an individual's past experiences and the patterns their body adapted to for survival. The concept was not just theoretical, but deeply personal, particularly for women, as anxiety could now be linked to uncomfortable topics such as abuse, neglect, generational expectations, or workplace mistreatment. The pressure to perform flawlessly while crumbling inside carries a heavy emotional burden. Finding solace and validation in shared experiences, individuals realize that their fears are not weaknesses, but rather wounds that can heal over time. Despite advancements in therapy accessibility, societal norms still prioritize productivity over mental well-being, especially for women juggling multiple responsibilities and navigating mental health issues like burnout and imposter syndrome. While social media offers a platform for solidarity and sharing struggles, it can also perpetuate surface-level solutions, overlooking deep-rooted systemic traumas. The increasing awareness that anxiety is not a sign of weakness, but a manifestation of historical echoes within the body, marks a shift in societal understanding. In the digital age, dominated by constant connectivity and wellness trends, women's anxiety is no longer just a medical diagnosis, but a daily reality amplified by technology. Waking up to a flurry of notifications and demands, the modern woman is expected to excel in various aspects of life, while projecting a polished image online, creating a relentless cycle of interactive pressure. The management of her brand includes navigating the presence of anxiety, which can act as both a warning sign and a style choice. Nowadays, posts expressing "my anxiety is bad today" can become popular as long as they are accompanied by the appropriate filter and a self-aware yet tidy caption. Vulnerability is marketable, but only if it is easily understood. Disconnecting is challenging, as the fast-paced world and harsh algorithms make it difficult. Even meditation has evolved into a form of performance art, monitored by an application and evaluated by your smartwatch. Anxiety is prevalent, but so is the abundance of advice available. You can browse through quick videos promising to alleviate your anxiety in less than 30 seconds. Techniques like breathwork, matcha, journaling, tapping are all beneficial until they simply add to the list of tasks in your already hectic day. Through it all, the foundation of women's anxiety remains constant. Pressure, the pressure to be well-liked, successful, informed, responsive, healthy, slender, ethical, kind, efficient, creative, funny, without being too humorous. Remember to respond to your boss, your closest friend, and the constantly active mom group chat. No wonder you feel constricted in the chest. In a world where being available at all times is the norm, embracing rest feels revolutionary. Silence raises suspicion. Achieving peace seems like a full-time occupation. Nevertheless, the underlying reality is that your anxiety is not a mistake. It's a warning sign that your nervous system is not built to withstand this level of chaos. After enduring centuries of suppression, medication, humiliation, and scrolling, to the point of exhaustion, something unexpected is happening. Women are decelerating, not because the world has loosened its grip, it hasn't, but because many are recognizing that striving to meet unattainable standards only leads to one outcome: burnout and an existential crisis. So now, in the corners of the internet and quiet homes, a shift is occurring. Within yoga studios and therapy circles, a gentle revolution is quietly unfolding. It is not attention-seeking or trending on social media. This revolution does not involve trendy workout attire or following self-help gurus. Instead, it emphasizes rest. Rest as a form of resistance. Rest as a way of reclaiming power. Rest as a healing practice that women were historically deprived of. This is not the enforced rest advocated by Victorian doctors. It is a deliberate choice. It conveys the message, "I do not owe anyone my exhaustion." Women are discovering the strength in saying no, not as a sign of inadequacy, but as a means of setting boundaries. They are prioritizing self-care by canceling commitments, disconnecting from technology, and allowing chores to wait. Surprisingly, the world continues to turn despite their temporary absence, although feelings of guilt persist, urging them to do more. A softer voice is beginning to emerge. This voice reassures them that they have already done enough today. It encourages them to take a moment to breathe. Supportive communities are emerging around this shared truth. These communities provide a safe space for women to empathize with one another without passing judgment. Instead of questioning why someone can't just push through, they say, "I understand how you feel." Together, they are reshaping the narrative, one deep breath at a time. They are learning that the path to healing is not always straightforward. Some days may involve meditation, journaling, and a nature walk, while others may bring tears and a decision to clear their schedule. Both responses are valid. Perhaps anxiety is not a sign of weakness, but an indication of awareness in a society that often encourages emotional numbness. If you find your thoughts racing or your heart burdened tonight, remember this: you are not a machine. You were never intended to be one. In a world that celebrates constant busyness and productivity, opting to embrace genuine rest is not a sign of weakness, but of profound wisdom, a wisdom rooted in ancient traditions and deemed revolutionary. Before tattoos became associated with modern trends or expressions of defiance, they had a deep historical significance. In fact, the earliest tattoos were not sported by rebellious adolescents or battle-hardened warriors. The Iceman, discovered in the Alps in 1991, is an ancient individual encased in snow and time, dating back over 5,000 years. His body bears 61 tattoos, consisting of simple black lines and crosses, strategically placed on joints, the spine, and ankles. Researchers suspect these tattoos served as early forms of acupuncture or pain relief, combining medicinal practices with rituals through the use of soot and sharp tools. Contrary to mere decorative purposes, these tattoos were essential for survival and not meant for mere display. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, tattooed mummies, particularly women, displayed intricate dot patterns believed by some experts to signify fertility and protectiveness during childbirth, while others see them as symbols of devotion to the goddess Hathor. These tattoos held spiritual significance, serving as protective symbols that individuals carried proudly into the afterlife. Siberian nobles adorned with tattoos of mythical creatures like deer, panthers, and griffins found in icy tombs were considered warrior marks, possibly indicating social status and serving as passes into the next life. These early tattooed individuals were not the first to do so, but among the first discovered, shedding light on the historical significance of tattoos rooted in ritual, purpose, and meaning, before they transformed into expressions of rebellion or beauty. Tattoos have always been more than just aesthetics. They have functioned as forms of medicine, memory, and protection, embodying reverence and storytelling through an ancient practice etched into human skin, binding individuals to their histories and beliefs. Long before words were used to identify objects, people expressed themselves through simple marks. When you see a basic line drawn with ink, consider that thousands of years ago, someone created it using fire and ash, imbuing it with immense significance. The essence of tattooing can be best understood by journeying to the islands of Polynesia, where tattoos were not mere fashion statements, but rather part of sacred ceremonies. In regions such as Samoa, Tonga, and Tahiti, tattoos were not casually chosen. They held deep meaning, were earned with respect, and were for life. The term tattoo originates from the Polynesian word tatau, which means to strike, symbolizing the rhythmic sound produced by tapping ink into the skin using carved bone tools. This wasn't a mechanical process, but a ritual. Tatau transcended mere body decoration. It signified a significant milestone, often involving discomfort, yet always carrying profound significance. A young Samoan man would endure days, sometimes even weeks, lying on a woven mat, while the tattoo artist, known as tufuga, meticulously tapped intricate geometric patterns onto his body using sharp bone and soot. These designs spanned from the waist to the knees, symbolizing maturity, identity, and courage. The pain was not incidental but crucial to the journey. Enduring the pain demonstrated readiness, while abandoning the process brought dishonor not just to oneself, but to the entire family. In Tahiti, tattoos conveyed ancestry and social standing, representing divine protection, spiritual bonds, or readiness for marriage, depending on the markings. Each dot, line, and curve held sacred significance. Even today, within many Polynesian communities, tattoos continue to uphold their profound role. They serve not just as personal expressions, but as connections to heritage, living narratives etched onto the skin, like a flowing manuscript. When Europeans initially encountered the Pacific Islands during the 18th century, sailors such as Captain Cook observed and were both intrigued and appalled by what they witnessed. They documented the practice in their journals, leading to the adoption of tattoos by many crew members as a way to commemorate their voyages, a mere trend devoid of its original significance. Nevertheless, the essence of Polynesian tattooing continued to exist. It was sacred and intimate, passed down through generations with pride. It symbolized that one story was worthy enough to endure pain and remain etched just beneath the skin permanently. As we move towards the East, the narrative of tattooing becomes more intricate, intertwining beauty and punishment, honor and shame into the flesh. In ancient China, tattoos were deeply stigmatized. Instead of representing spirituality or strength, they were often associated with dishonor. Individuals convicted of crimes were tattooed on their face or neck with labels like thief or traitor, serving as perpetual reminders to society of their actions and identity. Referred to as chipe branding, the stigma of exile lingered beyond the completion of the sentence, remaining on their skin for a lifetime. Despite the association with shame, tattooing in China held deeper meanings. Some Chinese warriors chose to adorn themselves with ink as a display of loyalty to their comrades or dedication to a cause. In the renowned novel Water Margin, one of the 108 heroic outlaws is described as having his entire body decorated with depictions of dragons, tigers, and flames, embodying a man's honor inscribed on his skin like sacred text. In Japan, the history is equally complex, if not more so. Early Japanese tattoos known as irahumai served various purposes such as warding off evil spirits, safeguarding fishermen, or symbolizing social status. However, similar to China, tattoos in Japan also served as instruments of punishment, where criminals were branded with marks. In various regions, individuals bore lines on their arms or markings on their foreheads as a visible display of dishonor for each committed crime. However, during the Edo period in the 1600s and 1800s, a shift occurred where elaborate, full-body tattoos started to emerge as a clandestine form of art. Vibrant designs featuring dragons, koi fish, deities, and demons began adorning the bodies of commoners, such as firemen, laborers, and gamblers, who held perilous occupations and reputations. The feared Yakuza crime syndicates in Japan embraced these full-body tattoos as symbols of strength, loyalty, and fearlessness, with more extensive coverage equating to greater respect earned through enduring pain. These tattoos were not for public display, but were concealed beneath clothing, only revealed in baths or during confrontations. In both China and Japan, tattoos existed at the intersection of art and punishment, representing identity and exile, a delicate balance between pride and shame, as the ink that adorned one's body also shaped their identity. In ancient Europe, tattoos carried dual meanings of power and retribution, influenced by the tattooist and the tattooed individual. The Celts and the Picts, tribal communities residing in present-day Britain and Scotland, left a lasting impression on Roman soldiers, with their striking blue tattoos adorning their faces and bodies, serving as symbols of warfare, intimidation, and identity. The plant-based ink used to create these intricate designs stained the skin a deep blue hue akin to thunderclouds, emphasizing the message of fearlessness and resilience in the face of danger, as described by Julius Caesar in his accounts with a mixture of admiration and apprehension towards these fierce and tribal warriors. It is ironic to note Rome's actions following this, as the Romans, despite their pride in law and order, utilized tattoos not as symbols of respect, but as a means of control. Criminals, slaves, and prisoners of war were tattooed with marks representing ownership or disgrace. For instance, a runaway slave might bear the letters FVG, indicating fugitivus. Similarly, a soldier who deserted his legion carried the stigma of shame, permanently etched on his skin. Moreover, early Roman Christians sometimes underwent tattooing to identify them as enemies of the state, or even as heretics, rather than receiving symbols of honor. These tattoos were not mere decorations, but burdens. Nevertheless, not all instances of Roman tattooing were punitive. In certain cases, soldiers in the eastern provinces chose to tattoo themselves willingly. These tattoos served as tokens of allegiance to their legion or expressions of devotion to a deity, reflecting a form of quiet rebellion hidden beneath their armor. As Christianity spread and gained influence, the practice of tattooing in Europe gradually lost favor. By the onset of the Middle Ages, it was widely condemned as pagan, sinful, or uncivilized. The prevailing view was that the body should be treated as a sacred entity, likened to a temple that should not be adorned with ink. Yet, deep within the forests and amid the misty moors, the ancient traditions persisted, whispered from one generation to the next, passed down from mother to daughter and warrior to warrior. Before tattoos were deemed criminal, they held a tribal significance. In the blood-soaked soils of ancient Europe, tattoos symbolized one's belonging to their people, their land, and their deities. While tattooing receded from prominence as Europe entered the prolonged period of the Middle Ages, it never completely disappeared. Rather, it went into clandestine practice. The Christian Church, now a dominant authority throughout the continent, censured tattooing, prescribing that the body should remain pure and untouched, serving as a vessel of holiness. Pagan traditions, including tattoos, were disparaged as heathen, rebellious, and even demonic. Nonetheless, even during this time, during the era of oppression, ink managed to permeate beneath individuals' skin. For Christian pilgrims, especially those embarking on the perilous voyage to Jerusalem, tattoos served as symbols of their unwavering faith. A small cross tattooed on their wrist or forearm was evidence that they had successfully completed the journey. Having survived the challenges of the seas, deserts, and bandits, these pilgrims returned home, bearing marks of their deep devotion. Some pilgrims received these tattoos in the Holy Land, skillfully etched by Coptic Christian families who had safeguarded the sacred art for generations. These tattoos were not mere decorations, but rather spiritual commitments, reminders etched into their flesh signifying their allegiance to God and their pilgrimage to His city. In certain monasteries, tattoos were used to distinguish members of specific religious orders, bearing hidden symbols that were subtle, yet purposeful. There are rumors, though seldom confirmed, of Crusades knights tattooing religious relics, saints, or sacred words onto their bodies before battle, so that if they were to perish in a distant land, their bodies would carry a heavenly mark. Beyond the boundaries of the church, ancient customs persisted in remote villages and wooded regions. Women would tattoo protective symbols onto their hands during childbirth, while shepherds used inked sacred patterns to ward off wolves. These tattoos were not made for fashion, but rather as prayers depicted through pigment. Nonetheless, receiving a tattoo in medieval Europe led to societal scrutiny and spiritual skepticism, relegating those marked to the fringes of society, except in cases where individuals were forcibly branded, such as criminals, prisoners, or slaves. In such instances, tattoos were not a choice, but a form of punishment. Consequently, the Middle Ages represented a paradoxical period where ink was simultaneously forbidden and venerated, regarded as both sacred and shameful. Tattoos during this time were not bold statements, but rather subtle whispers of faith, defiance, and the enduring human desire to make a lasting impression, even in challenging circumstances. During the 16th and 17th centuries, as European ships sailed across oceans, tattoos made a comeback in the Western world, not due to science or religion, but because of saltwater and superstition. Explorers such as Captain James Cook encountered cultures where tattooing held sacred significance, especially in Polynesia. Cook's sailors, intrigued by the intricate designs and symbolism of tattoos, began getting tattooed themselves. It was considered exotic, daring, and defiant, qualities that appealed to sailors. Consequently, tattooing spread through ports like spilled rum. Sailors established their own tattoo culture, which served as a mix of survival skills, traditions, and boasting rights. For instance, an anchor on the forearm signified crossing the Atlantic, while a turtle symbolized crossing the equator and earning the title of a shellback. Tattoos, like a pig and rooster, on the feet were believed to protect against drowning, as these animals were known to survive shipwrecks by floating in wooden crates. Each tattoo carried meaning, although interpretations often varied. For example, a dagger piercing a heart could signify lost love, or a rowdy night at a Caribbean tavern. Hold fast. Across the knuckles was a plea for a good grip on wet rigging during storms, not a plea for a firm grasp on life. Tattoos served as an unofficial form of communication among sailors, regardless of nationality, language, or rum-fueled luck, allowing them to convey their tales and identities in a vast sea of solitude. In coastal towns like New York, London, and Lisbon, tattoo parlors began emerging. These dimly lit establishments were filled with ink pots and tales from distant lands. Unlike artists in sacred temples, these tattoo artists were often former sailors themselves, using makeshift needles and gunpowder soot. For men accustomed to facing dangers such as drowning and diseases, tattoos became a way to express and commemorate their experiences. Mutiny seemed like a fair trade for a lasting memory, a small amount of pain for a permanent reminder. Tattoos transformed into cherished mementos, confessions, guides to the places visited, and the parts of oneself left behind. In a time when most people's tales faded over time, sailors documented theirs in ink, allowing the sea to carry them into legend. By the late 19th century, tattooing had evolved beyond being solely associated with sailors and outsiders. With the introduction of electric power, tattoos were stepping into the contemporary era. In 1891, New York tattooist Samuel O'Reilly patented the first electric tattoo machine, inspired by Thomas Edison's electric pen. O'Reilly's invention enabled quicker and more precise tattooing with less bloodshed. Tattoos could now be completed in hours rather than days. Although pain remained a part of the process, it now felt more like creating art than undergoing surgery. This marked the beginning of a new phase: tattoos as a form of performance. Circus attractions and touring museums started showcasing tattooed individuals as rare spectacles. Figures like Captain George Constantinis, the tattooed Greek prince adorned in intricate Eastern motifs, and Nora Hildebrandt, one of America's earliest tattooed women, captivated audiences with their elaborate ink and fantastical stories of captivity and forced tattooing by a savage tribe. These performers weren't just anomalies. They were living displays, their bodies narrating stories that drew crowds and pushed against Victorian norms, particularly when a woman bared a serpent winding around her shoulder. However, tattoos remained stigmatized in respectable society. A tattoo symbolized something significant. An individual had experienced war, maritime life, imprisonment, or had eloped with the circus. Despite this, behind closed doors, the upper class, tattoos were being quietly done by royalty such as King Edward VII and his son, future George V. They had tattoos, one with a Jerusalem cross and the other with a dragon from Japan. Aristocrats in Europe and even some American elites started embracing body art discreetly, always with a way to deny it if needed. Tattoo shops were thriving in port cities and gradually appeared in urban areas too, often tucked away between barber shops and pool halls. Although most tattoo artists were men, women were starting to join the profession, holding needles. Tattoos were no longer just a symbol of rebellion, but were evolving as a way to express memory, identity, or simply the excitement of having something permanent. As the 20th century progressed with skyscrapers, revolutions, and wars, tattoos continued to evolve quietly, sometimes hidden from view. In prisons, a new form of tattooing was emerging behind bars, in enclosed cells and concrete yards. These were not professional studio tattoos, but rather handmade raw creations, using makeshift tools like contraband needles, guitar strings, melted plastic, and ink made from soot and toothpaste. These tattoos were often painful, not always precise, but always carried deep meaning. In correctional facilities worldwide, from Russian gulags to American prisons, tattoos became a covert language. Each image conveyed a story. Every placement held significance, like a spider web on the elbow indicating time served or a teardrop near the eye representing a life taken or lost. Certain symbols, like 5 dots on the hand, with 4 at the corners and 1 in the center, communicated, "I am surrounded." In Soviet prisons, tattooing became a detailed system reflecting status and survival, such as a cathedral inked on the chest, symbolizing years spent incarcerated, with each dome representing a sentence, and stars on the shoulders indicating a high-ranking inmate. Disrespect was not an option when it came to tattoos that falsely symbolized a higher status, as they could have serious consequences. These tattoos were not merely for show, but held significance as a form of protection, a personal history, a warning, and a form of supplication. In the United States, prison tattoos were equally meaningful, representing affiliations with gangs, racial identities, territorial boundaries, and personal tragedies. The act of tattooing was often a communal endeavor among inmates, with the transfer of ink akin to a clandestine ritual. Many inmates did not choose to get their first tattoo. It was a necessary rite of passage. Over time, the distinctive style of prison tattoos infiltrated mainstream culture, particularly in urban settings, where artists adopted the bold aesthetics of prison ink in their own designs. What started as a survival tactic in prison evolved into a widely emulated style, featured in tattoo parlors, films, and street fashion. Despite this shift, negative perceptions persisted, especially towards visible tattoos on body parts, like the hands, neck, or face, leading to prejudice and closed opportunities. However, for the individuals bearing these tattoos, they represented tales of resilience, endurance, and self-definition in a world that often chose not to hear them. By the early 2000s, tattoos had evolved from ancient rituals and underground codes into a means of self-expression, transforming into a canvas proudly exhibited in various settings, from runways to social media. The boom in tattoo studios reflected this change, with these spaces transitioning into pristine environments that resembled art galleries more than seedy backrooms, providing individuals with a sanctuary for creative expression. Tattoo artists have transformed into celebrities in their own right, boasting portfolios, extensive wait lists, and fans who travel across countries solely to secure a spot in their chair. The variety of styles has skyrocketed, encompassing watercolor tattoos, fine-line minimalism, hyper-realistic designs resembling photographs, sacred geometry, cultural resurgence, portraits of pets, loved ones, and even entire life narratives embodied in ink. Advancements in technology have played a pivotal role, with machines becoming quieter, needles finer, ink safer, and healing processes quicker. However, beyond the visual appeal, the traditional motivations persist. Individuals continue to seek tattoos for reasons deeply rooted in memory, mourning, empowerment, and rejuvenation. Some tattoos commemorate significant life events, such as births, deaths, or fresh beginnings, while others conceal both physical and emotional scars. Some opt for tattoos following traumatic experiences, like escaping abusive relationships, while others pay homage to their ancestors. There are those who encode their survival stories in symbols they cannot vocalize. And of course, some simply adore frogs sporting cowboy hats. And there is a place for that too. Indigenous tattoo customs have resurfaced globally, filled with pride and reverence. Practices like moko in Maori culture, skin stitching in Inuit communities, bok in the Philippines, and other ancient techniques once stigmatized or prohibited are now experiencing a renaissance, passed down through generations, connecting heritage through intricate artwork. Yet, discussions persist around cultural appropriation, commercialization, and the sustainability of sacred practices amidst trends. Yet perhaps this tension is what makes tattoos so captivating. They have always existed at the intersection of pain and pride, permanence and impermanence, embodying both our current selves and our aspirations. In essence, tattoos encapsulate a tale expressed without words, a mark etched not for validation, but for honesty. In the unassuming and age-old dialect of tattooing, that truth has always been sufficient. The saga of the space race did not kick off with a rocket ship or a starry-eyed aspiration. It was born out of conflict, following the aftermath of World War II, with cities in ruins, borders redefined, and two superpowers positioned in opposition. The narrative of the space race took shape. The emergence of a new global power dynamic unfolded as the United States and the Soviet Union transitioned from uneasy wartime allies to ideological adversaries. The contrasting principles of capitalism versus communism and democracy versus dictatorship defined their opposing viewpoints. Following the end of World War II, the Americans covertly relocated the German engineer Viron Braun, famed for the lethal V-2 rocket, through Operation Paperclip. Concurrently, the Soviets secured their own German scientists and research materials. Both sides obtained valuable assets such as rocket fuel, designs, and the resources needed to propel rockets. Thus commenced the Cold War, characterized by cautiousness and distrust rather than direct confrontation. A competition ensued as both superpowers raced to develop not only nuclear weapons, but also effective means of delivering them across continents, exemplified by the intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. However, the notion of utilizing these rockets for space exploration rather than destructive purposes surfaced quickly. Space was perceived not solely as an arena for scientific advancement, but as a tool for asserting dominance. The race to conquer space symbolized moral ascendancy, technological prowess, and worldwide admiration. Space exploration held personal significance for the Soviets as a means to showcase their capabilities and recover from past hardships. On the other hand, the United States viewed space endeavors as imperative for national pride and security interests. Failure in this space race was deemed not just a setback, but a substantial risk. Consequently, both nations shifted their focus to space exploration with a sense of urgency and determination, recognizing rockets as pathways to prestige rather than mere weapons. Thus, a subdued competition between nations and their technological creations was set in motion above Earth's atmosphere, representing not a physical location to reach, but an intangible aspiration. On the night of October 4th, 1957, a significant event occurred that altered the course of history. It wasn't a grand spectacle, but rather a simple beep. The Soviet Union launched a small metal sphere known as Sputnik 1, from Kazakhstan. This shiny aluminum ball, similar in size to a beach ball and weighing under 200 pounds, featured 4 long antennas protruding from its sides. It lacked a camera or passengers, only containing a radio transmitter emitting repetitive beeps while orbiting Earth every 96 minutes. The significance of Sputnik lay in its representation of the Soviet Union's technological prowess, marking the first artificial satellite crafted by humanity to escape Earth's gravitational pull. This pivotal moment emphasized the Soviet Union's advancement and prowess, triggering a sense of urgency and concern in the United States. The sudden realization that the Soviet Union could launch a satellite meant they could potentially target the United States with a nuclear warhead, causing widespread panic. Schools implemented safety drills, headlines warned of imminent danger, and citizens contemplated the possibility of surveillance from above. Sputnik symbolized not only a satellite, but a declaration of the Soviet Union's space superiority, initiating a competition of pride, politics, and fear. Despite President Eisenhower's efforts to remain composed and assert that the United States was not lagging behind, urgency permeated behind closed doors. Funding for scientific initiatives soared. Congress expedited the creation of NASA, and American students were urged to focus on mathematics and physics to safeguard freedom. In a matter of weeks, the Soviets had made a groundbreaking leap. In 1957, the Soviet Union sent Sputnik 2 into space with a passenger, a stray dog named Laika. She was the first living being to orbit Earth, even though she did not survive the journey. This event signaled the Soviets' rapid progress in space exploration and marked the beginning of a space race. The United States faced the reality of being surpassed in space by a former wartime ally turned ideological adversary. This prompted the creation of NASA in 1958, emphasizing America's determination to not just catch up, but to lead in space exploration. Although Explorer 1, the first American satellite, was launched almost 4 months after Sputnik, its discoveries, such as the Van Allen radiation belts, demonstrated the U.S.'s contribution to scientific knowledge. The space race transformed into a national priority, influencing education, funding, and American identity. Space exploration was not just a scientific endeavor, but also a strategic pursuit for Cold War supremacy, with space symbolizing the new battleground for dominance. The United States was concerned about its global image in terms of communication, defense, and reputation, particularly with newly independent countries deciding between capitalist democracy and communist leadership. This led to the development of Project Mercury, the initial manned spaceflight program in America. 7 test pilots, later known as the Mercury 7, were carefully chosen to not only symbolize NASA, but also the aspirations of the entire nation. These individuals underwent rigorous physical and mental training in secrecy, emerging as heroes even before their space missions began. Simultaneously, the Soviet Union was preparing to advance their achievements beyond satellites by sending a human into space and safely returning them. This challenge became immediate and tangible for America, as the race to space was no longer theoretical, but a pressing reality. It was only a matter of time before either a Soviet or American astronaut would bravely venture beyond Earth's boundaries, risking their life to explore the unknown. On April 12, 1961, just after dawn in the Kazakh desert, stood a tall, silent silver rocket ready to make history. Sitting inside was Yuri Gagarin, a 27-year-old Soviet pilot exuding calmness and confidence, in his orange flight suit and white helmet. Despite appearing more like a regular test pilot than a trailblazer, Gagarin was about to embark on an unprecedented journey, leaving Earth completely behind. As the Vostok 1 spacecraft launched at 9:07 a.m., Moscow time, Gagarin's voice transmitted a single word through the radio that resonated globally: "Let's go." With that, he became the first human to venture into space, completing one orbit around Earth in a flight lasting 108 minutes. Gagarin reached a maximum altitude of 187 miles and traveled at speeds exceeding 17,000 witnessing our planet from a perspective never seen before. Viewed from above, the Earth displayed a vibrant blue curve against the black expanse of space, devoid of any boundaries. Upon reflecting on the breathtaking sight, he marveled at the simplicity of it, the beauty of the blue Earth and its astounding nature. However, it was not merely a moment of human accomplishment. It signified a significant geopolitical shift. The Soviets had achieved a milestone once again, following Sputnik and Laika, by successfully launching a man into space and bringing him back safely. Gagarin's orbit around Earth propelled him to global fame, emblematic of the Soviet Union's socialist superiority and scientific prowess. This unprecedented feat left the United States in awe, prompting a swift response from President Kennedy to match and exceed the Soviet achievement. Gagarin returned to Earth as a hero, landing in a field and surprising a farmer and her daughter, before calmly explaining his extraterrestrial journey. Although he did not venture into space again, his legacy was forever etched in history. Humanity had transcended the confines of Earth that day, venturing into uncharted territory. With one man's orbit, the space race had embarked on its most human phase. Shortly after Gagarin's groundbreaking flight, the United States, though shaken, was not deterred. While the Soviets claimed the initial victory in human space exploration, America had its own strategy in place to match and surpass the Soviet accomplishments. Enter Alan Shepard, the pioneer of America's space program. On May 5, 1961, Shepard, a Navy test pilot, boarded the Mercury Redstone 3 spacecraft, known as Freedom 7. Unlike Gagarin, Shepard's mission was a suborbital flight, a brief yet critical leap into space to demonstrate America's capability of sending humans beyond the confines of Earth's atmosphere. Ensuring their safe return was paramount, considering the high stakes involved. Shepard's brief 15-minute flight into space was a significant moment, symbolizing America's participation in the space race. The rocket launched precisely at 9:34 a.m., thundering into the sky as Shepard ascended to 116 miles above Earth. From this vantage point, he gazed in wonder at the planet below before beginning his descent back to Earth, plunging into the Atlantic Ocean. Promptly rescued by a Navy ship, Shepard emerged from his capsule to a hero's welcome, hailed as the first American in space. Although not as lengthy or distant as Gagarin's voyage, Shepard's expedition marked a pivotal advancement in the U.S. space program, showcasing their ability to safely transport astronauts to and from space. This achievement propelled NASA forward, setting the stage for subsequent missions such as Gemini and Apollo, as America endeavored to explore and conquer new frontiers, particularly the Moon. the moon race was not solely about technological prowess, but also about national pride and the indomitable human spirit. With the successes of Shepard's flight and other Mercury missions, the United States was firmly positioned on the path towards unprecedented space exploration. NASA had demonstrated its ability to launch humans into space. Now, faced with a more significant challenge, the agency had to determine if they could progress further, extend their missions in space, and reach the moon. The Gemini program served as the crucial link connecting the Mercury and Apollo missions, serving as a pivotal testing ground for technologies and methods necessary for a successful lunar landing. Initiated in 1965, the Gemini Initiative pushed the boundaries of human space exploration by utilizing larger spacecraft capable of accommodating 2 astronauts. The program's inaugural mission, Gemini 3, witnessed astronauts Virgil Grissom and John Young orbiting Earth, showcasing the feasibility of extended space missions and the astronauts' ability to navigate and manage critical systems in space. Subsequent Gemini missions grew in complexity, with Gemini 4 in June 1965 featuring the first American spacewalk conducted by astronaut Ed White, demonstrating humanity's capacity to operate beyond the confines of their spacecraft, a vital skill for lunar missions. Additionally, the Gemini program introduced essential techniques like orbital rendezvous and docking, crucial for facilitating the upcoming Apollo missions. Ultimately, the program aimed to prepare astronauts for deep space operations, including prolonged orbits, intricate maneuvers, and rigorous testing. Longer missions require significant endurance. By November 1966, Gemini 12 had completed its final mission, paving the way for America's readiness for the moon. Despite the Soviet Union's advancements, the United States was gearing up for an ambitious challenge that would not only test technology, but also human determination. The race to the moon was intensifying, with the finish line in sight. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy, motivated by Cold War tensions and the allure of space exploration, boldly announced the goal of landing a man on the moon by the decade's end before a joint session of Congress on May 25th. This declaration marked a shift from merely sending humans into space to the monumental task of reaching and returning from the moon. Thus, the Apollo program was born, designed by NASA for lunar exploration, with the unprecedented goal of safely landing and bringing back astronauts from the moon. In response to the Soviet Union's space accomplishments, the Apollo program was America's robust initiative in the ongoing space race. The tragic event of the Apollo 1 mission on January the 27th, 1967, where astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee perished in a pre-launch fire, marked a significant setback. However, it prompted NASA to reassess safety protocols and equipment, propelling the program forward with renewed vigor and advancements. In 1968, Apollo 8 achieved the remarkable feat of sending astronauts into lunar orbit, marking a significant milestone in human exploration. Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders, the crew, had the privilege of witnessing the far side of the moon for the first time, viewing the Earth rising above the lunar horizon through their spacecraft's window. This captivating sight captivated the world and symbolized a crucial moment in space exploration. The anticipation continued to build with NASA's preparations for Apollo 11, the mission that would realize Kennedy's vision of reaching the moon. Despite heightened tensions between the U.S. and USSR, the U.S. was steadfast in its determination to be the first to land on the moon. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin made history by successfully landing on the moon. Armstrong's famous words upon setting foot on the lunar surface, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," resonated globally, cementing the U.S.'s achievement of reaching the moon and marking a new era of human exploration beyond Earth. The successful completion of the Apollo 11 mission fulfilled President Kennedy's promise, signifying a monumental victory for the nation and a significant milestone for humanity. Although the space race had been won, the journey into space was just beginning. America accomplished the unimaginable on July 20th, 1969, by landing a man on the moon through the Apollo 11 mission, which realized President Kennedy's vision. Neil Armstrong's monumental first step on the lunar surface not only symbolized a national triumph, but also a global success for humanity. Following the historic Apollo 11 mission, the focus shifted to the next steps in space exploration. NASA's immediate goal was to complete the Apollo program, leading to 5 more successful moon landings from 1969 to 1972. During these missions, astronauts conducted experiments and gathered data while exploring various regions of the lunar surface. Exploring rock samples was a key aspect of the Apollo missions, providing valuable insights into the moon's history. The United States reaffirmed its leading role in space exploration through each successful mission. However, the Apollo program's achievements came at significant costs, both in terms of finances and human lives. By the early 1970s, political support for further lunar expeditions began to diminish, as the focus shifted due to decreasing urgency in surpassing the Soviet Union in space during the Cold War. This led to an abrupt end to the Apollo program after Apollo 17 in 1972. America's attention turned to the Skylab program, which commenced in 1973 as the nation's inaugural space station, where astronauts conducted experiments in microgravity over prolonged periods. Skylab showcased the prospect of sustained human habitation in space, laying the foundation for subsequent space stations and deep space journeys. In contrast, the Soviet Union, despite early triumphs, scaled back its space endeavors. While the USSR achieved the milestone of sending the first human into space, it never accomplished a moon landing. Instead, the Soviets shifted their focus to unmanned missions exploring Venus and Mars, along with establishing their space station program, Salute, which evolved into Mir, a sizable orbital research station emblematic of Soviet space ambitions. The subsequent era of space exploration was defined by the Space Shuttle program, initiated in 1981 with reusable spacecraft capable of conducting multiple missions. This new era promised enhanced access to space, facilitating routine cargo and crew travels to low Earth orbit and eventual construction of the International Space Station. Despite the potential of these frontiers, the initial shuttle flights were significant. The era of space exploration following the Challenger tragedy in 1986 was filled with difficulties, reminding everyone of the dangers involved. Despite this, the pursuit of knowledge and the desire to expand boundaries continued to drive progress. The dominance of government space agencies during the space race and Cold War began to shift towards a new phase characterized by private companies and global cooperation. Even though the focus had shifted from competition due to the end of the Cold War, space exploration remained as fascinating as ever. The International Space Station, launched in 1998, exemplified a remarkable partnership between the United States, Russia, Canada, Japan, and Europe, showcasing the potential of collective achievements. By prioritizing scientific research over rivalry, the ISS emerged as the most extensive space laboratory humanity had created, circling the Earth at speeds exceeding 17,000 and hosting astronauts from various countries for extended periods. While the ISS continues to promote international collaboration, scientific advancement, and technological progress, it also paved the way for a new chapter in space exploration: the commercialization of outer space. SpaceX, founded by entrepreneur Elon Musk in 2002, aimed to reduce space travel costs and facilitate human colonization of other planets, especially Mars. SpaceX's breakthrough in developing reusable rockets transformed space exploration. In 2012, SpaceX's Dragon capsule became the first privately constructed spacecraft to transport cargo to the ISS. In 2020, SpaceX achieved another milestone by ferrying astronauts to the ISS using its Crew Dragon spacecraft, marking a significant advancement in space exploration. American astronauts were launched into space from U.S. soil following the retirement of the Space Shuttle. SpaceX, along with other private companies like Blue Origin, founded by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and Virgin Galactic by Sir Richard Branson, have been advancing commercial space travel with a focus on suborbital flights for tourists and research. These companies are not only reshaping the space industry, but also expanding the possibilities for private individuals to explore space. The future of space exploration includes plans for lunar colonies, Mars missions, and commercial space stations, with SpaceX and Blue Origin working on the necessary infrastructure for interplanetary travel. In 2021, SpaceX's Starship completed successful test flights for deep space missions. NASA has collaborated with private companies to establish the Aramis Luna program, aiming to land humans on the Moon and establish a sustainable presence by the 2020s. Space, once dominated by superpowers, is now open to numerous nations and private enterprises. The vision of exploring Mars and establishing a human presence on other planets is no longer confined to science fiction, but represents the next significant advancement in human ambition. The stars beckon once again, similar to the era of the space race. In the vast desert of Egypt, where endless golden sands spread beneath a scorching sky, lies a captivating mystery, a lost wonder of the ancient world that surpasses even the grand pyramids of Giza, according to the esteemed historian Herodotus. Referred to as the Labyrinth, this immense underground structure is unlike any other, stretching deep beneath Egypt's earth and monuments. The Egyptians themselves described it as the complex, both in its architectural design and ingenuity, was truly a wonder. It was a maze-like structure of such complexity that it surpassed one's wildest imagination. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian who extensively traveled in the 5th century BC, was among the first to document this remarkable place. During his journeys to Egypt, he had the privilege of visiting the labyrinth in person. The sight he beheld left him completely amazed. According to his accounts, the structure consisted of immense chambers, elaborately designed corridors, and towering walls that far exceeded the magnificence of any other known building of that era. It was not merely a mere edifice, but a colossal maze filled with hidden corners and mysteries. Described by Herodotus, the labyrinth featured 12 enormous courtyards enclosed by towering stone walls. Within the chambers, there were intricate carvings, statues, and inscriptions portraying the gods and pharaohs who had governed Egypt over the centuries. Particularly fascinating was the sheer magnitude of the structure, covering not just a few rooms or passages, but an expansive complex sprawling over vast areas. Herodotus claimed that the labyrinth was so vast and intricate that it was practically impossible to fully explore it. He even likened it to the iconic pyramids, emphasizing its extraordinary grandeur and splendor. However, like many ancient wonders, the labyrinth eventually disappeared from sight, buried beneath the Egyptian desert sands. Over time, it evolved into a mythic tale. Despite its immense importance, it vanished from historical records, concealed beneath the ever-shifting sands as if nature had engulfed it entirely. Presently, academics and archaeologists persist in their quest for the lost labyrinth, eager to unearth its enigmas and unravel the secrets that have remained concealed for centuries. The labyrinth that Herodotus vividly recounted was not merely a structure, but a masterwork of intricate design. The structure appeared to push the boundaries of human creativity. As per his narrative, it was more than a mere assortment of rooms or corridors. It stood as an extensive, sprawling complex. Its grandeur and intricacy showcased the ancient Egyptians' expertise in architecture and engineering. Notably, Herodotus detailed that the labyrinth featured 12 courtyards, each enclosed by towering stone walls, resembling fortress-like boundaries. Adorned with elaborate carvings, these walls depicted gods, kings, and mythical beings from Egyptian lore, some so intricately crafted that they seemed almost alive, blending artistry and architectural prowess. The labyrinth's uniqueness lay in its vastness, with interconnected chambers that were large enough to accommodate entire villages within. Herodotus likened its magnificence to that of the pyramids, yet unlike the pyramid's singular purpose, the labyrinth held countless enigmatic secrets, with every turn leading to new mysteries. The presence of numerous statues within the labyrinth also astonished Herodotus. These statues were not mere representations, but masterpieces of great artistic skill, portraying Egyptian deities and pharaohs immortalized in stone. One noteworthy description highlighted a towering statue of Osiris in the central chamber, underscoring the divine aura permeating the complex. What captivated Herodotus the most was the labyrinth's deliberate layout, designed not randomly but to perplex and confound its visitors. The labyrinth was a mysterious and immense structure, as described by Herodotus, who believed it impossible to fully explore in a single visit due to its vast and intricate nature. Despite his awe-inspiring portrayal, the labyrinth ultimately became lost to history, buried under the sands of Egypt, awaiting rediscovery. Historians, archaeologists, and treasure hunters have been captivated by the legend of this lost marvel for centuries, with its exact whereabouts remaining a subject of debate and speculation. Many experts think the labyrinth could have been near Lake Moeris, an ancient artificial lake close to the Fume Oasis, about 60 miles south of Cairo, as suggested by Herodotus. This location, associated with the pharaoh Amenhotep II and the god crocodile Sobek, may have been part of a larger temple complex dedicated to the deity, despite numerous endeavors to find the labyrinth. Its precise location and condition remain a mystery. There has been little definitive evidence found due to the continually shifting sands of the desert. British explorers in the 19th century explored the Fiume region, but returned with fragmentary remains and uncertain artifacts. Among the discoveries were peculiar ruins, sizable rectangular stone structures that some thought might be a part of the labyrinth's walls. However, these findings were inconclusive, and a clear connection to the labyrinth remains unidentified. Modern technologies, such as satellite imaging and drones, offer new prospects for uncovering the labyrinth. Yet the vast desert landscape continues to conceal any hidden structures under shifting sands. Recent speculation hints at the labyrinth potentially being buried below unexplored ruins near the Fiume region. Despite progress, the exact location of the labyrinth remains unknown, leaving researchers both intrigued and frustrated by the possibility of it being concealed under the desert sands. Like many enigmatic ancient mysteries, the search for the lost labyrinth beckons to those willing to unravel its secrets, raising questions not only about its whereabouts, but also the potential treasures or secrets awaiting discovery within its walls. The lost labyrinth in Egypt was not merely a grand edifice, but an integral part of a broader, symbolic, and spiritual context. Understanding the labyrinth's significance requires examining its relationship with Egypt's other renowned marvels, notably the pyramids, long hailed as the apex of ancient Egyptian architectural prowess. The Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed for Pharaoh Khufu, stands as a testament to Egypt's might and the intricacies of their religious and architectural traditions. Herodotus compared the labyrinth to the pyramids, linking them to the same cultural and spiritual realm. While the pyramids are commonly linked to royal burials and the afterlife, the labyrinth may have had a different, yet equally symbolic purpose. Some theories propose that the labyrinth was constructed as a temple complex, honoring not one specific deity, but the broader cosmic forces of Egypt, encompassing various gods and mythologies related to life, death, and rebirth. Just as the pyramids were influenced by Egyptian cosmology, the labyrinth's intricate layout could represent the soul's journey through the afterlife, mirroring the complex Egyptian understanding of the universe, blending material and spiritual realms. Scholars suggest that the labyrinth, like the pyramids, may have been more than just engineering marvels, but symbolic representations of life's mysteries. Some even speculate that the labyrinth could have been used for spiritual rituals, where individuals underwent trials and experiences symbolizing the soul's journey to enlightenment, akin to the symbolism of the pyramids. Herodotus himself believed in the labyrinth's intricate network of passages and chambers, similar in complexity to those found within the pyramids, hinting at a shared symbolic purpose, guiding both the living and the deceased through spaces blurring the lines between the physical world and the afterlife. The intricate connection between the two structures may indicate a profound architectural and symbolic bond meant to guide individuals through spaces transcending life and death. While the exact purposes of the labyrinth and pyramids in ancient Egypt remain enigmatic, it is evident that both structures reflected the ambitious aspirations of the civilization. Far beyond mere physical constructs, they embodied a profound vision that transcended earthly realms, to explore the enigmas of the cosmos and eternity. The lost labyrinth of Egypt did not serve a mundane function like a residence or a market. Its presence was shrouded in mystery. Its intricate design hinted at a significant spiritual and symbolic role, rather than just architectural ingenuity. The labyrinth's intricate corridors and chambers, along with its grand scale, suggested a deeper significance that surpassed mere construction. Some hypotheses propose that the labyrinth acted as a sacred ground for ancient rituals and religious ceremonies, possibly dedicated to venerating various deities from the Egyptian pantheon. The Egyptians, known for their deep spirituality, often imbued their monuments with symbolic meanings that represented diverse aspects of the afterlife, cosmic harmony, and the soul's journey. An intriguing notion suggests that the labyrinth symbolized the arduous voyage to the afterlife in ancient Egyptian belief, which was rife with complexities and trials. Just as the labyrinth's convoluted pathways and concealed rooms symbolize the challenges the soul encountered in the afterlife. Navigating through the underworld required guidance from the gods and unwavering faith. The labyrinth might have also functioned as a ceremonial space where spiritual tests and trials were undertaken by priests and initiates at the mysterious site, which some speculate may have been ancient Egyptian mystery schools where special knowledge was shared. It is believed that initiates were guided through a labyrinth in a meticulous ritual, symbolizing their journey to spiritual enlightenment. The concept of a physical labyrinth symbolizing the soul's journey serves as a powerful link between the physical and spiritual realms for the ancient Egyptians' views on life, death, and rebirth. An alternative theory suggests that there could be a connection between the labyrinth and celestial alignments, given the Egyptians' profound understanding of the stars and their influence on agricultural and religious activities. The labyrinth's construction may have been aligned with celestial bodies, reflecting the night sky's patterns and potentially symbolizing the path of the sun or the soul's journey through the stars. Despite its mysterious nature, the lost labyrinth of Egypt continues to intrigue those seeking to unravel its secrets. Over the centuries, this enigmatic structure has remained hidden beneath the sands of time, but interest in it has not diminished. Today, archaeologists, historians, and explorers persist in their quest to locate the labyrinth, hoping that modern technology and renewed curiosity may finally unveil the secrets concealed in Egypt's expansive desert. The search for the labyrinth has been arduous and prolonged, with early explorers and archaeologists using primitive tools struggling to find the elusive site. In the 19th century, European expeditions embarked on searches in the desert region, notably around the Fiume Oasis and Lake. Early explorations in Moris, a location identified by Herodotus as a potential site of the labyrinth, yielded limited results, with only scattered ruins and ambiguous remnants being discovered. While these findings sparked curiosity, they fell short of definitive breakthroughs. The quest for the labyrinth has seen a resurgence in the 20th and 21st centuries, thanks to technological progress. Modern tools such as satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced excavation techniques have reinvigorated the search for the lost marvel. Utilizing aerial surveys and satellite imaging, researchers have scanned vast desert expanses where the labyrinth is believed to be situated. Some scholars speculate that beneath the desert sands lie concealed remnants of massive stone structures reminiscent of the labyrinth described by Herodotus. The vicinity of Lake Morris and the Fume Oasis near the ancient city of Crocodilopolis has long been associated with the labyrinth. It was in this fertile oasis, an integral part of Egyptian civilization, that Herodotus and other ancient accounts placed the labyrinth's construction. While archaeologists have unearthed ancient stone foundations and architectural traces in the area, conclusive evidence of the labyrinth's existence remains elusive. Recent reports of underwater ruins near Lake Morris have reignited interest, prompting theories that portions of the labyrinth might be submerged beneath the lake's waters. Speculation also abounds that the labyrinth could be buried under a sand dune near remnants of ancient Egyptian structures. Despite these advancements, the discovery of the labyrinth continues to evade researchers, underscoring the ongoing challenges in unraveling this ancient mystery. Every new dig in the desert stirs hope that the long-lost labyrinth might resurface one day, unveiling its secrets to the contemporary world. The Egyptian sands could hold more than just a forgotten structure. They might unveil the profound spiritual and architectural brilliance of one of history's most extraordinary civilizations. Seeking the lost labyrinth is not merely an archaeological venture. It's a bid to reveal a concealed segment of Egypt's past that could revolutionize our comprehension of ancient times. Discovering the labyrinth could offer unparalleled insights into the advanced civilization's architecture, beliefs, and daily routines. One intriguing aspect is the possibility of finding ancient Egyptian wisdom lost for ages within the labyrinth's intricate passageways and symbolic engravings. Some scholars suggest it could contain sacred texts elucidating their spiritual beliefs, shedding light on afterlife mysteries, their deities, and rituals ensuring soul transition. Uncovering these preserved texts could unveil Egypt's religious practices and cultural facets obscured by time. The labyrinth may also provide fresh insights into how ancient Egyptians perceived the cosmos and celestial realms, central to their society. Many argue that the labyrinth's layout was not only an architectural marvel, but also a representation of astronomical concepts. The alignments, or cosmological concepts, connecting physical space with the divine hold significance. Furthermore, the discovery of the labyrinth has the potential to transform our comprehension of ancient Egyptian architecture. The size and complexity of the structure, as described by Herodotus, indicate that it was constructed using advanced engineering methods that may have impacted later architectural wonders. Archaeologists are keen on exploring how the labyrinth's design may have influenced other grand structures, like the pyramids and temples scattered across Egypt. Beyond religious and architectural history, the labyrinth could shed light on the social and political organization of Egypt. Was it commissioned by a single pharaoh's decree, or was it a collaborative endeavor involving numerous laborers and artisans? What insights does its construction offer about the societal structure of ancient Egyptian civilization? Unveiling the labyrinth would not only expand our knowledge of Egyptology, but also reshape it, providing fresh perspectives on the ancient Egyptian culture and its global significance. Although the labyrinth currently remains concealed, buried beneath the sands, each new archaeological finding brings us closer to its potential discovery. The enigmas of the ancient world await decryption, with the lost labyrinth poised to emerge from obscurity and disclose its secrets. The lost labyrinth of Egypt transcends its physical existence, embodying symbolic meaning deeply ingrained in Egyptian culture. Its influence has reverberated through history, shaping not only the myths of ancient Egypt, but also the narratives of subsequent civilizations. Despite its absence, the concept of the labyrinth continues to intrigue human imagination. In ancient Egypt, labyrinths were not mere architectural wonders. They symbolized much more. The labyrinth is symbolic of the soul's journey, reflecting the challenging path individuals must traverse to reach the afterlife. In Egyptian beliefs, the afterlife was a realm filled with trials and mysteries where only the deserving could achieve eternal life by overcoming obstacles. The labyrinth's complex layout likely represented the soul's navigation through these trials, possibly connected to the worship of Sobek, the crocodile deity, known for being both a creator and destroyer. This duality mirrored the labyrinth's role in guiding and perplexing individuals. The maze's enigmatic nature, guarding secrets, symbolized the divine's nurturing and terrifying aspects. The influence of labyrinths extended beyond Egypt, with the concept spreading through various cultures and myths over time. The famous Greek myth of the labyrinth at Crete, constructed by the skilled artisan Daedalus, housed the Minotaur, a mythical creature blending human and bull features. Unlike the Egyptian labyrinth, the Greek version was associated with confusion and captivity, posing a threat of destruction to those trapped within. Through the centuries, the labyrinth's symbolism evolved, taking on diverse meanings worldwide. In medieval Europe, labyrinths symbolized the spiritual journey, often integrated into cathedral floors as a path for prayer and meditation. Pilgrims would walk these intricate paths, symbolizing their quest for spiritual redemption. A sacred space, demanding both wisdom and bravery to navigate, transcends borders and cultures, linking it to the universal experience of seeking answers, truth, and enlightenment. The labyrinth's ties to life, death, and spiritual challenges solidify its status as a timeless symbol. Across different civilizations, like Egypt, Greece, and various faiths, the labyrinth endures as a potent metaphor for the intricacies of the human spirit's quest for purpose and significance. While the enigmatic labyrinth of Egypt remains hidden beneath the sands, its symbolic significance continues to captivate and spark contemplation. It serves as a reminder that certain mysteries, though buried, are eternal, awaiting discovery when humanity is prepared to grasp their profound meanings. The quest for uncovering the lost labyrinth of Egypt persists, with each year bringing advancements in technology and techniques that inch us closer to unveiling its concealed truths. Despite centuries of elusiveness, the labyrinth remains a source of wonder for archaeologists and adventurers, stirring intrigue about this ancient marvel and the chance of unlocking one of Egypt's greatest lost treasures. Excavations in the vicinity of Lake Moris and the Fiume Oasis concentrate on locating the labyrinth. Many speculate that the labyrinth lies hidden near the ancient city of Crocodilopolis, once a bustling center featuring a temple dedicated to Sobek, the crocodile deity. This location is pivotal in theories tying the labyrinth to the Fiume, as even Herodotus drew connections between the two in his writings. Recent years have witnessed a revitalization in the search, with breakthrough technologies like satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar, enabling researchers to explore previously inaccessible areas. Recent technological advancements have allowed archaeologists to uncover new hints about what may be hidden below ground. These tools, enable the detection of concealed structures, even those buried deep under layers of sand. An aerial survey in 2017 across the Fumo Oasis identified anomalies in the landscape, such as large rectangular shapes that could indicate the presence of ancient ruins or walls, possibly marking the labyrinth's site. While these findings are promising, much of the maze remains concealed, with the desert's ever-shifting sands masking the full scope of its potential burial. Speculation exists that a section of the labyrinth may be submerged beneath the evolving shape of Lake Morris over centuries. The notion that portions of the maze could reside under the water's surface provides renewed optimism for those who believe it is yet to be uncovered.